My name is Claire. I'm 35 years old, living alone in Denver, Colorado. This year, I decided to throw myself a birthday party. Not because I love parties, but because I wanted to trust one more time that my family, despite growing distant over the years, might still remember the day I was born. "You're wasting your time," Lily had texted when I sent the invites, her words a sharp jab at my hope. I rented a small corner in a cozy bar down north of the city. Nothing extravagant, just a few strings of warm lights and some childhood photos I taped to the wall, as if to remind them I still existed, still belonged to that family. I ordered a medium-sized chocolate cake, prepared a few thank you cards, and sent invitations to everyone: my mom, my stepdad, and my two half-siblings. Every one of them got it. That evening, I arrived early and picked a seat near the bar, where the light was soft enough to feel warm but not draw attention. 6:00. "I don't care about you," I whispered to myself, the truth stinging as I waited. 7:00 p.m. The cake sat untouched. The cards were still sealed. I took a small sip of water, trying not to glance around too much, hoping to avoid the pitying stares of strangers. The bartender poured me a free cherry wine. "Maybe they're just running late," he said gently. I nodded and forced a smile. That smile broke the moment the clock struck 8. No one came. Not a soul. I cut a slice of cake, pretended to post something on social media like everything was fine, but nothing was. I ate each bite in silence, not because it tasted good, but because I didn't want the cake to look forgotten. "You're invisible to them," the voice in my head echoed, amplifying my loneliness. My eyes avoided the lights and the truth. At 9 p.m., I packed my things, left a tip, and watched on what had just become the witness to my solitude. I came home to silence. The only sounds were my heels against the floor and my heartbeat, steady and heavy. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, hollow inside. It wasn't their absence that hurt. It was that I still held on to hope. A week later, while I was working, my phone buzzed. A group message from Mom. "Hey family, George's 60th birthday is coming up. We're throwing it at Mountain View Lodge. It'll be $1,500.00 per person. Please send it to me by Wednesday. Love you all." "You owe us this," Mom added in a private text, her demand laced with guilt. I read it 3 times. No apology, no mention of my birthday, just a shameless invoice dressed up as affection. My sister replied right away, "Just sent it, Mom, so excited." Then my brother, "All paid, can't wait." I sat frozen. I wasn't angry, just coldly relieved. There was nothing left to preserve. No more pretending to be the good daughter. I opened my payment app and sent exactly $1.00. Note: "A happy birthday. You're not my family anymore," I typed, but didn't send. My defiance burning. I locked my front door, changed all passwords to our joint accounts, and sat down, exhaling like it was the first time in years I'd really breathed. After sending the sarcastic $1, I went through my contacts and blocked every number in the family thread. Mom, George, Lily, Evan. With each tap on block contact, it felt like I was unhooking a chain that had wrapped around me for years. I gave no explanation. They didn't deserve one. That night, I called a locksmith to replace every lock in the apartment. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew my mother. Silence in her was always a challenge, and she never walked away from a challenge. 3 days later, while working at my favorite coffee shop, my phone flashed a strange bank notification, suspicious login attempt from new device. My chest tightened, like an invisible rope had just tightened. I opened the banking app, hands trembling. There were traces of access to the old joint account, the one I had used to cover Evan's tuition, Lily's wedding, and even the kitchen renovation Mom insisted on to ease George's back pain. I called the bank immediately. "Freeze the account now. Move all remaining funds into my personal one. Change all verification methods." My voice was hard. No hesitation. "No stealing from me," I hissed to the bank agent, my anger boiling over. That evening, I started receiving calls from unknown numbers. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. "What the hell are you doing? Why change the locks? Why block me? And you froze the account. Call me back." "You're dead to us," Lily texted, her words a vicious attack. I turned off my phone. But I had underestimated my mother's ability to rewrite the narrative. She always knew how to turn herself into the victim when things slipped out of her control. That Wednesday night, while watching a movie, the doorbell rang, fast and loud. I glanced at the security cam. 2 uniformed police officers stood outside, one stern-faced, the other younger, holding a notepad. I cracked the door. "Can I help you?" the taller officer asked. "Are you Claire Foster?" I nodded. "We received a report that you're missing. Your family's concerned you may be mentally unstable and unreachable, possibly at risk of self-harm." I blinked. "Missing? They're lying!" I snapped, my voice shaking with fury. I stared into their eyes, a cold wave of disbelief creeping down my spine. "I'm fine. I just cut off contact with some people for personal reasons. I've been working, living normally. I'm not a danger to myself." The younger officer studied me. "Do you have someone who can verify that you're safe?" I handed him my phone, opened my remote work app, and pointed to the live meeting feed. "I've been on calls all day. Over 10 people in my company can confirm." The other officer jotted something down. "Your family said they haven't heard from you and are worried." I gave a dry smile. "I blocked them after they tried to break into my bank account, ignored my birthday, and then sent me a bill for my stepdad's party." "They are manipulating you," I added, my voice steady but sharp. "They went quiet," one finally said. "We don't intervene in family matters, but if you feel harassed, you might want to consider a restraining order." I nodded. "If they contact me again, I will." They left without further questions. When the doors shut, I stood there for a long while, chest hollow. I never imagined a day my own family would file a missing persons report. Not out of concern, but because they couldn't handle losing control over me. I sat down on the bed, phone still in hand. New messages kept rolling in from strange numbers. "Claire, open the door. I'm here. You can't treat your family like this. George is losing his mind. He thinks you've gone crazy. You're a traitor." Evan texted, his accusation cutting deep. I didn't answer. I wasn't that quiet girl standing behind a door anymore. I'd locked it, and this time the key was mine alone. It was Friday noon when the doorbell rang as I was making coffee. It wasn't the polite knock or soft call like the officers a few days earlier. It was loud, angry pounding. I walked slowly to the door and glanced quickly at the security screen. Mom, George, my stepdad, and behind them stood Lily. All 3 wore tension on their faces. Mom squinted, her lips pressed into a tight, furious line. George stood with arms crossed, shoulders rigid. Lily. She was tapping on her phone constantly, probably recording every moment to retell it later in her own twisted way. I didn't open the door right away. I turned on the speaker. "What are you doing here, Mom? Open the door right now," she snapped. "We need to talk." "That's enough, Claire. You're tearing us apart," she screamed, her voice raw with rage. "Talk about what, Mom? About how you tried to access my bank account? Or how I was left out of George's birthday but still got asked to pay for it?" George cut in, voice thick with reproach. "You're acting like a child. We're all worried about you, and this is how you respond. Get ungrateful," he bellowed, his face red with anger. I let out a dry laugh. "Worried? You called the police and reported me missing. That's your version of concern?" Lily banged hard on the door. "Who do you think you are? Ignoring our calls, our texts? Now you're playing the victim. You're pathetic," she spat, her words dripping with scorn. I took a deep breath and opened the door. I didn't let them in. I stood firm in the doorway, blocking entry. "What do you want?" I asked, with no attempt to hide the cold edge in my voice. My mother looked me in the eyes, voice full of drama. "We're family, and you're treating me like a stranger. I don't even recognize you anymore. You've betrayed us all," she accused, her eyes blazing with fury. "Maybe you never did," I replied. "Do you know what hurts me the most? Not being forgotten on my birthday, but realizing I only matter when I pull out my wallet." George stepped forward, face flushed. "We raised you, fed you, educated you, and now you turn your back on us, block everyone, and tear the family apart? You owe us everything," he roared, his voice shaking with indignation. I stared at him, a strange sense of distance washing over me. "Raised me, educated me. I started working when I was 17. I earned my own scholarships. I paid off my student loans. I bought my first car with wages from my part-time jobs. What did you give me besides the bare minimum? Mom exploded. And what about the nights I stayed up worrying about you, the loans I took out to buy New Year's gifts for this family, and now you throw it all away over a party? You're heartless, she screamed, tears of rage streaming down her face. My voice sharpened, every word cutting clean. Not over a party. Over a decade of endurance. Every time I had money you just happened to need to borrow. I paid nearly $35,000, 0 cents, for Lily's wedding, and never got so much as a thank you. Every time I said, I'm tired, you told me we're all tired. Don't be dramatic, Lily sneered. You always play the martyr. You have money but act stingy. You're not the only one who struggled. You're just jealous of us, she taunted, her voice full of malice. You're right. I nodded, eyes locked on hers. I'm not the only one who struggled, but I am the only one who got exploited and still called it love. George tried to keep calm. We just want things to go back to how they were. A family can't fall apart over a misunderstanding. You can't abandon us, he pleaded, his voice cracking with desperation. I shook my head, hands still gripping the door. It's not a misunderstanding. It's the truth. It's years of giving from one side and taking from the other, and I'm done being your walking... My mother eyes burned with pure rage. Fine. You want out? I'll give you out. But don't come crawling back when you have no one. You'll regret this, Claire, she hissed, her voice trembling with venom. I spoke slowly, each word deliberate. If I have to choose between being alone or being used, I choose alone. She opened her mouth, but George pulled her back. Lily gave me a sharp glare before turning away. I shut the door. Calm, firm, final, like closing the last page of a chapter I should have ended long ago. Outside, I heard their footsteps fade, then the slam of a car door. Silence followed, but it no longer felt heavy. I stood alone in my apartment, hand over my chest. It didn't hurt. It just felt like breathing, clear and weightless. 3 days after the confrontation at my front door, I received a notification from the bank. A request had been filed to refinance the house in the Cherry Creek area. The Emmy house under both my mother's name and mine. Yes, 7 years ago, when my mother called me late at night sobbing, saying they were about to be evicted for not qualifying for another loan, I agreed to co-sign the mortgage. Back then, I thought simply, I can help. I am in a better financial position, but I never imagined that one day they'd try to refinance again without even asking me. I sat in front of the screen, feeling like I'd just been punched in the chest. It wasn't just disrespect anymore. This was a scheme. I called my attorney right away. Ms. Patricia Evans, a sharp woman in her 50s who had helped me handle some financial disputes back when I worked in marketing. Patricia, they're trying to refinance the house without my consent. I want it blocked immediately. They're betraying you again, I said, my voice trembling with outrage. She replied curtly, send me the old mortgage agreement, the title deed, and any related emails. I'll freeze all transactional rights tied to your name. But I wasn't done. I opened my laptop and began drafting another email. Subject: request for personal financial audit, family support expenses from the past 7 years. I wrote to my personal accountant and attached a list of what I remembered most clearly. Down payment on house for Mom and George, $75,000, 0 cents. Pickup truck loan for George, $22,000, 0 cents. Betting expenses for Lily, $32,000, 0 cents. Evan's college tuition over 4 years, $48,000, 0 cents. Emergency support during Mom's illness in 2022, $65,000, 0 cents. Miscellaneous borrowed and forgotten amounts over the years, $15,000, 0 cents. Total, $257,000, 0 cents. I asked them to create a detailed spreadsheet itemized by category and by year, with proof of each transaction attached. I didn't want to argue anymore. I wanted numbers. I wanted evidence. I wanted receipts. 4 days later, the audit was complete. I stared at the spreadsheet, hands slightly trembling. Not from regret, but from the realization that I'd spent years living under the illusion that I was loved. Turns out that love had a price tag and a column total. I sent the file to the temporarily reopened family group chat. The attached message had just 5 words. I want it all back. You're a monster, Lily texted back instantly, her words a desperate attack. Within the hour, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed call from Mom, a message from Lily. Are you insane? Who counts every penny with their own family? Then, Evan, I'm working side jobs to survive and you want what, for me to sell blood? And of course George had his say. His message was cold. You're tearing this family apart. Your mother hasn't slept in days. You'll pay for this, Mom tested. Her threat hollow but vicious. I didn't respond. I emailed Patricia. I want to withdraw my ownership share of the house if they can't buy me out. Push for a forced sale. She called me back within 10 minutes. You sure? This will force them to either gather the money to buy your share or sell the entire property and split the proceeds. They might turn on you. They already have, I replied, my voice resolute. I stared at the audit. I'm reclaiming fairness. What they do with their face, that's on them. That same day, Patricia's law office sent an official notice to my mother and George. Claire Foster is withdrawing her capital from the jointly owned property at 1175 Highland Avenue. If no response is received within 14 days, the process for a forced sale will proceed. The reaction came swiftly. First, a text from Lily. You really want to see Mom back in that run-down old apartment? You're not just cold. You're selfish. She added, her words a plea for guilt. I read it, said nothing, then deleted it. They called me selfish. Me, the daughter who used to send money every month, even when no one bothered to ask how I was. That night I received the one message that actually made me pause. Claire, if you go through with this, we'll lose everything. The house will be sold. I have no idea where I'll go. Are you really this heartless, Mom? You've broken my heart, she added, her manipulation clear. I set the phone down without replying. I didn't feel heartless. I felt clear-headed, and for the first time in years I knew with certainty if I didn't see this through, I'd slip right back into the old role, silent, providing, and getting hurt. Since Patricia sent the legal notice, I didn't hear a word from my family for an entire week. That silence, it didn't feel like surrender. It felt like the calm before a storm. Quiet, calculated, and full of intent. And then it arrived. Tuesday afternoon, I got an email from my lawyer. Your family has agreed to sell the house. It's being listed as a fast sale property, but it seems they're finding every excuse to delay your share of the payment or stalling to hurt you, Patricia warned, her tone firm. I replied with just 2 words. Stay close. 4 days later, I got a call from a distant relative. Aunt Margaret, my mother's older sister who lives in Arizona. Her voice was soft, but there was tension beneath every syllable. Claire, your mom called me crying, saying you're throwing the whole family out onto the streets. I don't know exactly what's going on, but they said you're demanding hundreds of thousands of dollars. Is that true? They're lying about you, I thought, my resolve hardening. I didn't explain. Not because I didn't respect her, but because I had no energy left to justify myself. Everyone believes the version of the story they want to hear, I simply said as calmly as a breeze brushing my chest. I'm only asking for what I gave. They can sell the house, the cars, anything they bought with my money. That's fairness, not revenge. She went quiet, then hung up. 2 weeks later, the house was officially listed. A 2-story, 3-bedroom home with a wooden deck out back, once the site of backyard barbecues and happy family photos, was now listed below market price just to cover debt. I felt nothing looking at the photos, no sadness, no satisfaction. They started selling cars. George's newer model Chevrolet Tahoe sold for $18,000, 0 cents. My mother's sedan posted on Facebook Marketplace as if they were downsizing, not collapsing. Then came the jewelry, the white gold necklace Mom wore for years, once said to be a wedding memento, the emerald earrings I gave her when I got my first promotion. I recognized them in a photo the broker sent to Patricia, proof that they were making payment efforts. Then came the first transfer, $12,000, 0 cents. A week later, another $6,000. I said nothing. I didn't follow up. But Patricia didn't wait. She sent a formal collection letter warning that if the remaining balance wasn't paid, we would proceed with a forced sale. No more negotiations. The next morning, I received the remaining $8,500, 0 cents. Total, $26,500, 0 cents. Exactly what I had asked for. Not a penny more. When that number appeared on my banking screen, I stared at it like I was looking straight at my reflection. 10 years of giving, 10 years of being drained, wrapped into a single cold line of text. Transfer, received. That very same day, I got an update. They had vacated the house. According to Patricia, my mother couldn't qualify for a rental due to her low credit score and lack of collateral. George had lost his job 4 months earlier but had kept it from everyone. Lily and Evan both moved in with their partners. Neither of them offered to take in Mom or George. I don't know exactly where they are now. There were whispers they might be staying in the old RV George once planned to convert into a retirement travel van. Maybe now it's their main home. That evening, a message came in from Lily. "You happy now? Mom's curled up in a freezing van with no heater. You call that justice? You've ruined our lives," she added, her words a final attempt to wound. I stared at that text for a long time, not because I felt guilty, but because it sounded so familiar. Always the same voice, a family that only remembered me when they needed saving. I didn't respond. I don't live in that cycle of guilt anymore. I took a walk around the park near my home. No phone, no anger. Just me, the crisp January air in Denver, and the clearest feeling I've ever had. Freedom. 5 months later, I slowly learned how to live with silence. No messages, no calls, no voices blaming me in the middle of the night. Life had grown quiet. Though quiet, it felt almost foreign. But I wasn't afraid of that. Peace was never something I had been taught to accept. It arrived slowly but firmly. One Thursday evening, a coworker invited me to go bowling after work. I normally avoided loud places, but that day I said yes, maybe because I needed to see for myself after everything. Had I truly stepped out from under that shadow? We picked a lane near the end. Laughter echoed. Neon lights flashed across the polished wood floor. I threw a few frames decently. The sound of pins crashing felt like a quiet release. Then it was my coworker's turn. I glanced to the right and froze. 2 lanes over, a man was struggling to lift a heavy, dark blue ball. His shoulders looked thinner than I remembered, his hair grayer. He missed. The ball rolled into the gutter. As he bent down for another, his eyes swept toward me. That look stopped. The shock on his face was unmistakable. But my stepdad... I stood up, instinctively turning to leave, but I stopped, and this time I didn't look away. He walked slowly toward me, his bowling shoes making a soft squeak across the floor. "Claire," he said gently, as if even one wrong breath might shatter the moment. "You've changed everything," he said, his voice heavy with regret. I stood still. No nod, no smile. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said, glancing at the empty lane beside me. "Mind if I play around?" I didn't reply. I just motioned to the attendant to reset the lane. He sat beside me. Silence stretched between us like a tightrope over 2 crumbling towers. His first throw fell straight into the gutter again. He gave a quiet laugh and shook his head. "Guess I've lost the last habit that made me feel like I was better than someone." I said nothing, just watched the next ball roll wide again. "Claire," he said as he sat back down. "I didn't come here to ask for money. If it were the old me, I probably would have, but not this time. You destroyed us," he added softly, his voice cracking with defeat. I turned to look at him. The green light brushed across his face, revealing lines he could no longer hide. I used to think I was strong, a man, the head of the house, but when you started earning, growing, becoming more independent, I felt small. His voice dropped a beat. I was jealous, and instead of trying harder, I hid behind the role of stepfather. Used the label family to hold on to what was never mine. I rested my arms on my knees, eyes steady. "You didn't just take money. You took trust and..." He dragged my mom, my siblings, into a cycle of dependence no one was willing to admit. "You made me feel worthless," I said, my voice steady but piercing, years of pain spilling out. He nodded. "I know no apology could ever fix it, but I still want you to know I truly regret. I'm sorry I never told you that I was proud of you." "You're too late," I replied, my tone firm, rejecting his belated remorse. At last, I heard the words I had longed to hear for nearly 20 years. "You know, I'm not coming back," I said, voice low but clear. "I'm not trying to reconnect. I don't want to fix anything. I just want to live the rest of my life without being expected to give, just to exist in a relationship." He was quiet, then reached out his hand. It trembled slightly, like he wasn't sure what he'd get in return. I stared at it for a moment, then slowly extended mine. His hand was cold. Mine wasn't warm. But that handshake finally felt equal. Two people, not a provider and someone in need. I stood up, straightened my jacket. "I'm heading out. Enjoy your game." "You're stronger than us," he whispered as I turned away, his voice barely audible. He nodded. "Didn't ask me to stay." Outside, the night air brushed against my hair, carrying traces of the sounds still echoing from inside. I opened my car door, sat behind the wheel, and took a long breath. I drove away from the bowling alley, streetlights sliding across the windshield like streaks of memory being wiped clean. Every red light was a breath out, slow and deep, as if each vertebra that had been tight for years was finally starting to release. There was no one in the car asking if I was okay. No missed calls waiting to guilt me, no messages saying, "I don't know who else to ask but you," or, "I'm desperate, can you help?" Just me, in silence that I didn't feel like loneliness. When I got home, I opened the window. The night breeze drifted in, scented with pine from the trees below. The city, deep into the night, no longer buzzed with horns or chaos, only the quiet rhythms of people actually living, not just surviving. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, hot tea in hand. In that moment, I didn't think of the past. I didn't count the years it took to break free from the cycle labeled obligation. I just felt my body no longer being pulled by anyone else's will but my own. I used to think revenge would bring satisfaction, but it didn't. What I'd done wasn't about winning, it was about escape. Escape from the role of the good daughter, escape from the trap of unconditional love that only went one way, escape from emotional control, tears, anger, guilt sweet enough to numb every boundary. I opened my laptop and checked my account summary, not to see the balance, but to stare at the number that had never made me feel safer than now. I booked a trip, not to run, but to begin again somewhere I had no roles to play, a place where I wasn't someone's sister, someone's daughter, or the name on a loan. I was just Claire. The next morning, I woke early. No alarm, no pressure. I walked through the park near my house. Kids were kicking a soccer ball, an older man was letting his dogs run free, and a young woman was reading on a bench. No one knew who I was. No one needed anything from me, and that feeling, it was freedom. I don't know what the future will look like. Maybe my family will try to reach out again. Maybe someday I'll receive a handwritten letter from my mother full of tears and longing. But what I do know for sure is this. I'm no longer under their control. I don't need anyone to approve of my choices. I made them, and I live with them. Steadfast, quiet, and without regret, that night as I walked past a little secondhand shop, I saw a small wooden sign hanging on the wall. Rita, freedom isn't walking away from someone, it's returning to yourself. I smiled. No one had to see it. Claire's story is a powerful reminder that family bonds don't mean unconditional sacrifice. In a world where family pressure is often disguised as duty, setting boundaries is an act of courage. Claire wasn't chasing victory. She was choosing freedom from a sweet but toxic kind of control. Like so many in real life, sometimes to truly love yourself, you have to stop running and walk away. Not out of anger, but because peace in the end is the greatest gift. "What have you done?" Mom's final voicemail played, her voice a mix of despair and accusation, which I deleted without a reply. What do you think of Claire's choice? Was she too cold or simply protecting herself? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more deep, emotional family stories.